All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Torah Studies, our weekly look at the Torah portion of the week. This week's Torah portion is Vayeira. Vayeira. And for those counting at home, it is still Parashat Vayeira. So let's pick up the narrative where we left off last week, because we are in the middle of drama.com. So here's how this works. The entire Bereshis, the entire Genesis, into kind of halfway through Exodus, is this like nonstop narrative-driven narrative. I said the word narrative twice there, but that's how we are. So it's got narrative after narrative, like stories after stories, and we have the main figures. So we start off with creation, we have Adam and Eve, and then we have corruption, and then we have destruction, and we have Noah and Noah's Ark and the animals. And then we hit last week, we get to Abraham. We spoke about why 75, and we talked about that last week. That was so 7 days ago. And then we have this unbroken narrative, Avraham and Sarah and Yitzchak, and it keeps on going. And so right now we're in the middle of the Avraham narrative. We ended off last week's Torah portion with a bris, with Abraham being told at the ripe old age of 99 by God Almighty, it's time to have a circumcision. In fact, the words that precede that command is halech lefanei veheyed tamim, walk before me and you will become complete. Ironically enough, for Avraham to become complete, he has to remove something, which is kind of weird, because you think of complete and you think of things that are not tampered with, as it were. It's like, I'm trying to think of an example, like, collectibles, people are into collectibles. So like the highest, like the holy grail of collectibles is if it's still in the sealed box, right? Like if you have, for example, like in NES, you know what NES stands for? Nintendo Entertainment System, from back in the, 80s, with a sealed Super Mario Brothers, kind of original edition in the package, in the plastic, right? If you have that, which I used to, till I opened it, right? 5 seconds later. But if you have that, I think it goes for like, multiple thousands of dollars, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars. So what is it? It's got to be complete. It's got to be. And what makes it complete? Untampered with. And Hashem is telling Avraham, tamper and you'll be complete. Which reminds us sometimes complete is not the way what we think it is. Complete means complete unto God, which means sometimes you got to leave, right? In our own lives, you got to leave some baggage at the door, and then you are complete. Moving on to this week's Torah portion, Avraham is recovering from his surgery, from his bris surgery. And the Torah tells us that he is sitting at the entrance of his tent, kechom hayom, in the heat of the day. And as our sages tell us, what was he doing? He was scanning the horizon for passersby, because he was so much of an ish chesed, of a kind man, that loved to invite people in, that he was pained by the fact that that day there was no one around. And he was, as much as he was pained by the circumcision, he was even more pained by the fact that he wished to welcome guests and there were none to be found. And so God sends him 3 guests, 3 messengers, angels in the guise of human beings. And these individuals, these angels, each serve a separate function. 3 angels. Who remembers what the angels did? Number 1. Who's got it?
Tell Sarah she's going to have a baby.
Good. Inform Sarah that she's going to have a baby. Mazel tov. Angel number 2.
Destroy Sodom and Gomorrah.
Hold on. Let me do one before that.
Okay.
Angel 2. Heal Abraham. But brought a little healing to his pain. Angel 3.
Destroy Sodom and Gomorrah.
Destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah, or Sodom and Amorah in the Hebrew. And that was the third angel's mission. Now, from here we learn also, parenthetically, something that I've shared before regarding angels, that every angel has a mission, but not 2 different missions. So that's the way it works. Angels are like, one trick angels. That's it. They have their mission, and that's it. So that's a little bit about the angels. So what happens after God informs Abraham through the angel, or maybe even directly, that he and Sarah are going to have a child, which will become, which will be named Yitzchak. After that, God ultimately tells Avraham, Abraham, about his plan to destroy the city of Sodom and the other surrounding cities. And we're going to focus on that communication where God communicates to Avraham, to Abraham, and Abraham's response to God. That is going to be the subject of today's lesson. Today's lesson is called Not My Thing, Not the Point. That is today's title. Parashat Vayeira. Let us begin. Scott, please take us away with text number 1, but please wait a moment as I pull this up on our beautiful screen. Give me one moment. Let me get this ready for everybody. And almost there. Hold on. Here we go. All right, take it away, please.
Now God had said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do?" After all, Abraham is to become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him. For I have signaled him out, that he may instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of God by doing what is just and right, in order that God may bring about for Abraham what has been promised him. Then God said, "The outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so great. I will go down to see whether they have acted altogether according to the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will take note." The angels went on from there to Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before God.
Okay, thank you. Now, these are 6 verses, and you may have noticed there's so much information here. I want to break this down one point at a time. Take a look at verse 17. We start off with this fire take. Look what God says. Now, God had said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do?" What does that mean? Who's God speaking to? Himself. Excellent. Yeah. God is almost like musing to himself, like, am I going to keep this? It's kind of like deliberating, like, should I keep this act of destruction a secret from Abraham? Imagine if Abraham wakes up the next morning, turns on CNN and sees that a bunch of cities were destroyed. God, I was just speaking to you. Like, how did you not clue me in? Does that ever happen to you? Where you're speaking to somebody, you have a conversation, and the next day some news breaks, and you're like, I was literally just speaking with you, and how come you didn't mention it? Does that ever happen? I don't know the context that it would happen, but it's kind of what's going on over here. God says, can I really keep this a secret from Abraham, what I'm about to do? That's not nice. And then again, just to go through this line by line, because it's really beautiful. Verse 18, God again reasons to himself, after all, Abraham is to become a great and populous nation. Meaning, like, how can I not give him the scoop before it happens? And then verse 19, I've singled him out, that he may instruct his children and posterity, etc. Meaning, like, Abraham, I love him. He's special. He's great. We're connected. His children are going to be my people. So basically, it all comes down to, how could I possibly keep this a secret and have him surprised by what is about to unfold? Therefore, I will tell him. Now, where does God tell him? Verse 20 and 21. This is now God speaking to Abraham. And look what God says. Then God said to Abraham, the outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, their sin is so great. I will go down to see whether they've acted altogether according to the outcry that has reached me, which also is a powerful take over there, verse 21. Basically, God is telling Abraham, seems like I'm going to destroy these cities based on their behavior. But God says, I will go and check to make sure that the information I'm hearing matches with what's going on the ground. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly does that mean? Like, what information is there on the ground that might be different than what God is hearing? So this reminds us of a classic teaching regarding judgment. And that is, you cannot judge someone else from your place. You have to judge them in their place. Does that make sense? Even when it comes to like setting up courts, there had to be courts in as many cities as possible so that there could be local brands of justice, because the justice in one place might not match the people of another place. So it's like God is saying, in heaven, there might be one standard, but let me judge it based on the standard of earth. And let me see if indeed on earth, there's also culpability. There's also guilt. Now, the answer was, obviously, as we know the story plays out, the answer was yes. But this is God teaching us how to judge. Judge the other, not from your standing, but against their own standing and their own place. This echoes what it says in Pirkei Avot. Do not judge someone. Do not judge your fellow tzugazund until you've reached their place. Right? Until you reach their place. That's a powerful teaching. And that reminds us again, you cannot judge someone in your own space. It's got to be on with an understanding of who and where they are and where they're at. All right. That concludes kind of the preamble to the story. Now, what happens next is Avraham springs to action. Text number 2. All right, Dasi, please take it away. Text 2. This is the very next verse.
Abraham approached and said, "Will you actually destroy the righteous with the wicked?"
So Avram is incredulous. And he's like, are you kidding me? You're going to take out the righteous with the wicked? That does not seem fair. Please continue. You know what, Dasi, please continue. Text number 3.
Suppose there are 50 righteous people in the midst of the city. Will you still destroy it and not bear with place for the sake of the 50 righteous people inside it?
So here he's asking this question. And sorry, I'm just going to jump in between. I feel like it's going to be an easy way to do this. So Avram begins to negotiate. He says, well, what if there are 50 righteous people? You're going to destroy everybody, including the righteous people, and take everybody out? That doesn't seem right. Would you not spare the city for the 50 righteous people? Continue.
It would be sacrilege to attribute to you such an act, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. It would be sacrilege to attribute this to you. Shall the judge of all the earth not do justice?
How does that sound to you?
Let's fit it.
It's a lot of chutzpah. It's a pretty brazen and bold statement. It's like, you call yourself the judge of all the earth, and you're going to act like this? You're going to kill the innocent with the wicked? That's not fair, right? Collateral damage? How does that work? Okay, continue.
God said, if in Sodom I find 50 righteous within the city, I shall bear with the entire place for their sake.
Which means that God is basically saying, yeah, if I would have, it's kind of like if I would have found 50, I wouldn't have said that I would destroy them. But meaning God is responding, there aren't those 50 righteous people that you're suggesting. They just don't exist. So Abraham continues to negotiate.
Side thing. What about children?
Yeah. Why doesn't Avram say, like, what about the kids?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good question.
Or like how, I mean.
Women and children.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a very good question. I would imagine that the commentators discuss it. But I don't recall seeing an answer to that question.
Or how could Hashem not?
Maybe only the men are being targeted, but I don't know if that makes sense. I think the whole city was overturned.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, how could you not have like, if there were at least 50 children in the city, would they not constitute 50 righteous people?
You would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe he's saying 50 people of the age of majority that have the ability to choose right and wrong, that have chosen right, maybe keep it, not destroy it in the merit of those that are choosing good. I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure.
Abraham responded and said, behold, I have begun to speak to my master, and I am but dust and ashes. But suppose they lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Will you destroy all the city because of 5? He said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 there. Okay, so basically Avraham is negotiating. Abraham says, okay, what about 5 less? What about 45? And God says, all right, if there were 45, I would not destroy. But alas, the unspoken response is, there aren't those 45. Mm-hmm. Abraham continued to speak to him and said, suppose there are 40 found there. He said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 40. He said, let not my master show anger, and I will continue to speak. Suppose 30 are found there. He said, I will not destroy it if I find 30 there. He said, here I wish to speak to my master. Suppose 20 are found there. He said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 20. He said, let not my master show anger, and I will speak just once more. Suppose 10 are found there. He said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. And again, the implication is God is saying, even if there were just 10, I would spare the city. But alas, there aren't those 10. God departed when he finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. And that was the end. And the next scene is the cities of Sodom
and Amorah, Sodom and Gomorrah are being destroyed. Lot is the only one. Lot, his wife, well, his wife didn't make it far, right? Remember the story?
She turned to salt.
Turns around, turns to salt. That's it. But him and his unmarried daughters, they escaped, and his two daughters, and they survived. They actually thought they were the only people alive on planet Earth. And that opens up another story, which we'll leave aside for right now. But the point is that Avraham, upon hearing the news of the imminent destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, so he springs into action, begins to negotiate, and ultimately fails in his mission to secure the safety and sparing of the cities. But nonetheless, he tried. Okay, I want to focus on the verse that was isolated in text number 2. So if we go all the way back to text number 2. So there was one verse in the entire narrative, and this was an unbroken narrative. Text 1, 2, and 3 are all back to back to back. But text 2 was isolated, and for a very specific reason. Because there is a word there that is a little bit curious. And the word there is Vayigash. It's the opening word of text number 2. Vayigash Avram Vayomar. And Abraham approached and said, the word approached, Vayigash. So if you and I were to just take the word Vayigash, approach, in a very simple way, what does the word approach mean? If I were to tell you I approached someone else, what would that mean? Physically come closer. The problem is, in this case, you cannot explain the word Vayigash as physically approaching. Why not? Because take a look at the verse right before that. Literally, verse 22. This is verse 23. Verse 22. What does verse 22 say?
Avraham remained standing before God.
There you go. The angels went on from there to Sodom to destroy the city, while Abraham remained standing before God. So then what is text 2? What is the next, what is verse 23 saying? Abraham approached. If he's standing before God, what does it mean that he approached? He got closer, but he got in God's face. I mean, I don't know that you want to do that. So what does it mean that Abraham approaches if he's already remaining standing before God? Do you understand my question?
Mentally, psychologically.
Good, very good. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So what we're going to need to do today is explain the word Vayigash non-literally. It's a non-literal approach. It's a more figurative approach because there are approaches that are also non-literal, non-spatial or physically spatial. For example, when you guys come up with an example, when would you use the word approach in a non-literal, like getting in physical proximity closer to someone else? What would an example be? Use approach in a sentence that's non-literal.
Approach a subject.
Approach a subject. Right? How would you use that in a sentence?
That I wanted to talk to Vayeira about some deep, important thing, and I approached the subject with her.
Right. So I want to discuss a topic, so I approached the subject. It doesn't mean you walked over to the subject as though the subject were standing here, you're standing there, and you're physically getting closer. Approach, you could say like another usage of the term would be like you're speaking to someone, a confidant, about an approach you should take in talking to someone else. Like, what approach do you think I should take? It doesn't mean how should I walk over to them, right foot first or left foot first. It's not a physical approach. Approach could also mean just how you're approaching a situation. I know I'm using approach to define itself, but I'm struggling to define it in the non-literal way, other than to say you and I know it very well, this concept of an approach being something that's non-literal and non-spatial. Correct? Okay. So this leads us to the commentaries. And the commentaries now will share with us that indeed that is exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening with Avraham, with Abraham approaching God. It's a non-literal, non-spatial approach. And the commentary that we're going to use first, that we're going to study first on this, is the Avraham. Okay, let me pull this up on the screen. This is going to be text number 5. All right, text number 5. We're going to read the Avraham, and we are up to Vayeira. Please take it away.
Wait, text 5?
Text 5. We're skipping text 4. Text 5.
When Abraham heard from God about Sodom, he drew near. This drawing near was not spatial, but rather he drew near to do battle on their behalf and to praying for them.
Says the Avraham, though, what does it mean? Nigash or Vayigash, he drew near. It doesn't mean he physically approached. It was non-spatial, but he drew near to do battle on their behalf and to increase praying for them, meaning he took an approach, he took a strategy, he took up a strategy, he decided on an approach, and that approach would be to do battle for them and to increase praying for them to God. Now, this is going to be augmented by the way the Rebbe explains this. Toba, please read text number 6 in the Rebbe's words.
Before the verse Abraham approached, it says, Abraham remained standing before God. This clearly indicates that Abraham did not physically move from his place before God. Therefore, we cannot interpret approached in the simple sense of a physical movement from one place to another. Rather, we're compelled to say that approach here refers to a spiritual movement, that Abraham shifted from one inner emotional and mental state to a new state.
Okay, so the approach here is not physical, it's non-spatial, it's non-literal, it's an internal shift. He shifts from one state of being to another state of being in order to petition God. And now my question to you is, I mean, it sounds nice. What are we talking about? What? Look at that last line. He shifted from one inner emotional and mental state to a new state. What does that mean? What kind of state? What state was he in? What state is he moving to? What is that? Like, it sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. It's like a word salad. He didn't physically approach because he was standing before God anyway. So what happened is he had a shift within himself. He moved from one, he approached, he made an approach. What kind of approach? What are we talking about here? Practically speaking, what happened? What are we talking about? Well, the good news is we have plenty of time to explore this because we're only halfway through the class, and we got plenty of time to explore additional commentaries, midrashim, and Hasidic philosophy to make sense of this internal shift, this new state shift. And the way we're going to do this is by quoting a midrash. Bereshis Rabbah, this is text number 7. I am going to read this. Take a look. It is a beautiful, beautiful midrashic text. Abraham approached and said, that is the opening quote of the verse, comes along the midrash and says the following. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nehemiah, and the sages debated the matter. Meaning, when it says that Abraham approached and said, what type of approach did he take? Rabbi Yehuda said the term approaching means for battle, as in Yoav and the people who were with him approached Aram to battle. That's a verse from Chronicles, Divrei Hayamim. That's one opinion. Rabbi Yehuda says the approach was for war. Rabbi Nehemiah said approaching means for conciliation. As it says, the children of Yehuda approached Yeshua. Negotiation. It wasn't for battle, it was for negotiation. The sages said, third opinion, approaching is for prayer, tefillah. As it says, it was at the time of offering up the afternoon sacrifice that Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi, approached and he said, God of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yisrael, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that is from Malachim, from the book of Kings. So we have 3 opinions, 3 comments. Hey, Ramon, good to see you. We have 3 rabbis, 2 rabbis and then the rabbis in general. 3 different opinions about what Vayigash, what the approach is. One rabbi says the approach was for battle. One rabbi says the approach was for conciliation, meaning let's negotiate. And the third says the approach was for prayer and petition. Comes along the 4th opinion. We thought we had 3 opinions, now we have a 4th. Rabbi Elazar interpreted, Avram said, he says all 3. Yes, yes, and yes. If it entails battle, I'm coming. If it entails conciliation, I'm coming. If it entails prayer, I am coming. Meaning, Avraham said, Vayigash, because the Midrash says that the word Vayigash in other places in Tanakh, other places in Scripture, are used for war or for conciliation or for prayer. And Rabbi Elazar says, yes, yes, and yes. Vayigash means he came for battle with God. He was going to fight God over this. Vayigash also means he came to negotiate, and negotiate he did. And Vayigash also means he came to pray, and he prayed. Now, where do we see this in the text? Where do we see this? Let's go back. Let's go back to text 2 and text 3. Let's go back to the story. It's going to be fun. Okay? And how about, I think what would be fun is, if you tell me, where do you see Avram being tough? Which verses tell us or indicate that Avram was ready for battle, was ready to take on God and challenge him hard?
25.
Verse 25. Let's take a look together at verse 25. What does Avram say? It would be sacrilege to attribute this to you. Shall the judge of all the earth not do justice? Okay, that sounds like he's ready to fight. What about verse 23? Verse 20.
23, yeah.
Verse 23, text 2. Will you actually destroy the righteous with the wicked? Again, kind of accusing God. So both of those, and those are the two that I was thinking, both of those indicate Abraham ready to fight God on this. Abraham's challenging God about this. Where do we see a petition? Sorry, where do we see a negotiation happen?
All through on page 61.
Excellent. Right? If there's 50, how about 45? Or how about 40? 30? Do I hear 20? What about 10? He's making a deal. Trying to, at least. Conciliation. Can we reconcile? Can we figure this out? Okay.
Trump would be proud.
All right. What about prayer, supplication, kind of begging? Where do we see this? Where do we see Avraham taking up a posture of like entreating and praying, not negotiating and not tough, but kind of like even humbling himself?
27.
27. Excellent. What does Abraham say? In the middle of the negotiation, behold, I've begun to speak to my master, and I am but dust and ashes. And verse 30, let not my master show anger, and I will continue to speak. This idea of, and verse 32, let not my master show anger, and I will speak just once more. Those are indications that he is like praying and asking for mercy on their behalf by humbling himself before God. And so we see clearly that, as the Medrash says, Avram came with all three intentions. He came to battle God, to take God on head on. God, how could you do such a thing? He came to petition God. Do I hear 50, 45, 45, 45, 40, 40, 40, 40, 35, 35, 30, 30, right? That's my auctioneer voice. It's my attempt at an auctioneer voice. And then and then Abraham also comes for prayer. Anochi offer Vayeira, I'm but dust and ashes, right? So he comes in a way of conciliation. He comes in a way of petition. And he also comes in a way of strength. All three. So comes Rabbi Nehemiah and says, that's exactly what's going on here. The word Vayigash means all three. Take a look at Rashi text number 8. Ramon, please read text number 8. This is Rashi. It's on page 65 of our text.
Abraham approached. We find the verb to approach used in the sense of coming near to wage war. So Job drew near unto the battle, 2 Samuel 10:13, of coming near to persuade by entreaty. And Judah approached him and said, "O my Lord," Genesis 44:18. And of coming near to pray, and Elijah, the prophet, approached and he said, "God of Abraham," etc. 1 Kings 18:36. Abraham went in with all these methods in mind: to fight by speaking stern words, to persuade by entreaty, and to pray.
Very clear. Rashi takes a medrash, and Rashi clearly cites with, I said Rabbi Nehemiah, it's not Rabbi Nehemiah, with Rabbi Elazar's opinion that he came with all three. And Rashi says clearly, kind of drawing from the midrashic text, we could see the anatomy of a Rashi. Rashi builds it out, very clear and concise terminology, and says Avram approached with all three, with all these methods, right? To fight by speaking stern words, to persuade by entreaty, and to pray. And now we have an answer to our question. What was our question? Our question is, the original question was, what does the word Vayigash mean that he approached? He was already standing there before God. He's standing before God and then he approaches? What kind of weird description is that? He said, no, approaching means there was an internal shift. He had to shift his mindset. And we're like, well, what does that mean? Like, I hear words, but what actually happened? So now we have an answer, a beautiful answer. You know what Avram did? Listen to this. Avram said to himself, there's a very big need over here. There's a very big, there's a lot at stake right here. And what is at stake? What's at stake is the lives of these people that are living in these cities. And I am not going to give up until I secure their safety. Now, spoiler alert, didn't work, but that was his intention going in. And so in his mind, what is the shift? The mindset is, I'm going to do whatever it takes strategically to secure their safety, to secure their relief. If it takes harsh words, I'm going to employ them. If it takes negotiating words, I'll employ them. If it takes humble words, I'll employ them. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it. You know, sometimes you enter into a conversation and you're not thinking strategically, and it kind of just like unfolds the way it unfolds, right? Like there's a conversation and you start off and you're like, hey, and then someone says no, and you're like, okay, you said no. Well, how about this? Avraham went in thinking of all the potential things. He's going to hit him hard. And if God says no, then he's going to negotiate. If God says no, then he's going to beg. He's going to hit all three. But Avram went in. Vayigash Avram. Avram approached. What does it mean approach? He approached the conversation with all three options in mind. You with me on this? That's the big idea. He approached the conversation with all three in mind. Avram was strategic. Abraham was strategic about the conversation. He didn't just wing it. He didn't just say, by the way, if anybody's been in, I don't have that much experience with this, but if you've been in business negotiations, you probably want to walk in with a game plan, right? You probably want to walk in with a strategy. Like you're first going to mention this, and then you're going to mention that. And if that doesn't work, then you got this fallback. You've thought about the conversation. Vayigash Avram. Avram approach, meaning he created intentionally in his mind an approach that he's going to take. He mapped it out. First, I'm going to go here, then I'm going to go there, then I'm going to go there, and he rolls it out. Now, unfortunately, in the end, it doesn't work. And God says, no dice. And Avram walks away. And I want to pause for a moment and share something that I've shared many times before. And even recently, we had a class on Noach a few weeks ago, and the failure of Noach to even advocate on behalf of the people in his generation. Here we see Avram does. He does advocate, and he does with three approaches, harshly and diplomacy. And he tries to negotiate it, and then he tries to pray. But when God says no, he backs down. The third hero, of course, by contrast, is Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. After the sin of the golden calf, God tells Moses he's going to destroy the people. And what does Moshe say, the greatest Jewish leader of all time? What does he say?
I'm not with you anymore.
Yeah, he says basically, like, if you say no, I'm out. See you later. He doesn't walk away. Well, I tried. Noach didn't try. Avram tried and then walked. And Moshe said, if you don't forgive the people, and I quote, direct quote, Mechenina misifracha asher kasafta, erase my name from the book that you've written. Meaning, I want nothing to do with you or your Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu throws down the gauntlet. I don't know if I'm using that term in the correct context, but he puts down an ultimatum. He says, listen, God, I love you, but if you don't forgive, see you later. I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm done with you. I'm done with Torah. I'm out. And God ultimately gives in. God says, okay, all right. And we learn from this, three different approaches. One approach is to say, I don't care about anybody else. Probably not the best approach. Another approach is to say, I care, but only up to a point. Yeah, once it gets past that point, then if you're telling me that they're really guilty of the crime, all right, so then I guess they should be punished. That's kind of how it ends with Avraham. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, shows us what it means to go to bat even for someone who's guilty. Doesn't matter they're guilty. So what? Who cares? You're God. You can figure out a way how to give them a pathway of redemption. And if not, again, sayonara, baby. See you later. I'm out. Three different approaches. Obviously, ideally, we learn to behave like Moses, to really stand up for each other, even when there's guilt and culpability and all that stuff involved. But today, the focus is not on Moshe, the focus is on Avraham. And I do want to draw a powerful lesson, even from Avram's actions, which came up empty in a certain sense, but still can teach us a lot about at least how to approach things when it comes to advocating on behalf of others. Again, he didn't go all the way, but we can still learn something from his at least initial approaches. So let's do that now. in our final section of today's class. But first, let me pause for a moment. Questions? Any questions so far?
I was gonna say
Yeah.
it's interesting that you said you kind of didn't go all the way, but it's also a lesson because I feel like you can also see Kabbalistic teaching in this. Because first, you see Abraham use, like he said, he's like, surely like you love this place too much, like you wouldn't destroy it.
Right.
Then it's Gevurah, then it's like, well, like your standards, like your restriction, like what? No way you would do something like this, right? And then he goes into Ferret, he goes into like the individual soul, like, okay, what about like five people? Like, there's no way you're gonna do it for over that. And like shit, like it seems like it as it goes down, it's like it stays there at kind of like the individual. So because he's like, oh, I'm nothing. Like he kind of goes deep into like the true soul, but he doesn't kind of go further past
Right.
that. You know?
Right. He taps out at a certain point, but we can still learn from where he did go.
Right.
And here's how we want to frame this. So the way we're going to frame this is a little bit Kabbalistically, and Roman, along the lines of what you just said. There is a famous Kabbalistic teaching that tells us. Sorry, I think I'm taking up too much space over here. Feel free to use the table. There's a famous Kabbalistic teaching, mystical teaching, that tells us that the three patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, correspond to the three sfirot or kochat hanefesh, the three powers or soul powers of chesed, gevura, and tiferet. Let me explain. So for some of you may be very familiar, with some of you may be not so familiar. Basically, Kabbalah teaches that God employs 10 energies with which to create the world, known as the 10 sfirot. Sfirot, energies, lights, whatever. And they are Chachma, Bina, Dat, Chabad, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod Yesod, and Malchut. Different energies, but let's focus here on the middle ones, which are the three primary emotional energies. There's intellectual powers, functional powers, and then there's emotional powers, and we being created in the image of God, these powers are mirrored in our soul. We also have them, as of course we know and we experience. We have chesed. Chesed is the capacity to love. Gevura is the and give, love and give. Gevura is the capacity to withhold and be stern. And then Tiferet is the power and capacity to be compassionate and Rahmanas. How do you translate Rahmanas? Compassion. Pity. What is it? Merciful. Yeah. Mercy and compassion. So we have love, restraint, and then mercy or compassion. So let's talk about this. They're each different. Each one of these is different. Love typically is associated with open giving, boundless giving, no judgment. I'm not looking, I'm not assessing, I'm not analyzing. If you ask, I'll give. Even if you don't ask, I might give. I might just say, here, I got some extra. Take it. That's chesed. Chesed is open channels and the directional arrow is pointing outward. No judgment, no audits, just giving, pure love, pure giving, pure generosity, chesed. Gevura is the opposite. Gevura is 1 second. You want me to give? I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I'm going to look closely. I'm going to judge. I'm going to audit. And you know what? I might end up holding it for myself. So chesed is about giving. Gevura is about withholding. Chesed is no judgment. Gevura is judgment. And then we come to the third element, which is Tiferet. Tiferet is a mixture of the two. Tiferet is psychological Gevura and behavioral chesed. What do I mean by that? On the inside, it's got the same judgment and audit nature as Gevura. Tiferet looks at the other like, do you deserve? Do you not deserve? What are you going to do? If I give it to you, what are you going to do with it? What are you not going to do with it? And then the conclusion is, you know what? I feel bad. I'll give it to you. So chesed doesn't give because I feel bad. There's no feeling bad. Chesed is like, yeah, absolutely, I love you. Gevura is, I don't know about you. I'm not giving. And Tiferet is, I'm judging and I feel bad and Rahmanis and I'm taking pity on you and mercy on you. And then I give and then I extend. So it's psychological Gevura because there is judgment happening, but it's behavioral chesed because at the end I am giving. Does that make sense? Okay, it's a hybrid of the two. So the mystics teach that the three patriarchs mirror these three attributes. Avraham is chesed, Yitzchak, Isaac, is Gevura, and Yaakov, Jacob, or Israel, is Tiferet. 1, 2, 3. That's the lineup. Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet. And you know what? It's uncanny. We see it in their lives. What do we see in their lives? Very simple. Avram, what kind of life did he live, by and large? Chesed, generous, loving, welcoming. You need a place to eat? Come in. You need a place to stay? Come in. No questions asked. Yeah, he might want to smuggle in some monotheistic schmoozing around the table while we're at it, while we're eating. But by and large, generosity. It's about giving. No judgment. Yitzchak. Now, here's the crazy thing. We don't know much about Yitzchak. Which type of people do we not know a lot about?
Oh, like hidden people.
More introverted people you don't know a lot about. Hello. Like, we know everything about Avraham because he's all over the place. He's an outgoing chesed guy. The more introverted gvura, keep to myself. I don't put myself out there. I kind of stay with myself. You don't know much about. And guess what? Yitzchak, what did he do? I don't know. I have no idea. I know what he didn't do. Like, he didn't find himself a wife. That was found for him. Right? Avraham sent his servant Eliezer to find a wife for Isaac because Isaac stayed home because he couldn't leave Israel. Why not? Because he didn't go out. He didn't go out much. He stayed local.
I never thought about how you're right. Like, we just get random bits of information. Like, oh, Abraham was friends with the Canaanite chief. Like,
Abraham does everything. He's everywhere.
Yeah.
He travels, and then there's a famine. He travels again, and then he meets people. He's speaking to kings, and he's fighting wars.
Let's make some souls.
Making deals with pharaohs and Avimelechs and all these things.
Interesting.
And Yitzchak, I don't know. Everything happens to him. His father wants to bring him up as an offering. It happens to him. They find him a wife. It happens to him. All we know about him, literally, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Oh, and then the blessings. He's tricked by his son. I mean, like, and then the only thing we know about him, what he does, he digs wells. That's the only thing we know about him. He digs wells. Okay? I don't know. Digs wells. It's like an internal work. It's like digging wells is like uncovering the depths of insight. It's such internal work. Yitzchak is an internal work guy. He's on the inside. Gevura, it's all Gevura energy. I mean, like, do we even need to describe this? We all have seen this. A chesed personality. Is the word gregarious? Is that a word? Is that they're out there, they're outgoing, they're gregarious, they're schmoozing, they're talking, they're giving, they're sharing, they're making connections. I got someone for you to meet. They're all out there. The Gevura person and the party, it might be the corner. It might be a little bit, and is maybe thinking about the internal work and is looking at the outgoing person is it's a little superficial. What about the depth? What about the real stuff? Gevura is on the inside. Tiferes is kind of a hybrid. How is that? Yaakov? I don't know. We have to match it up a little bit. How is it Yaakov? I don't know. He travels, but he's also introvert. He's got traits from both. He travels around, he makes deals, but he's also secretive. He's also tricking his dad at some point and kind of living kind of almost not really a double life, but living his own internal stuff going on, even as. And Yaakov is kind of emblematic of Tiferes. So here's the big idea. Think about Avraham. Avraham is the easiest to figure out his personality. He's chesed. I mean, that's easy. That's easy stuff. God says to him, "Go." Absolutely, God, I love you. Whatever you want, go. Yes, sure. He's a yes guy. He's a pleaser. Whatever you want, absolutely, I'll give you whatever you want. And then God says to him, FYI, things may go down tomorrow. I think I'm taking out a city or two. And what does Avraham say? How dare you? He employs first and foremost Which approach? Harshness. He's going to battle. With whom? With God. That is not his personality. His personality is easygoing, go with the flow, make the other one happy, make God happy. And now he says to God, no way. And you call yourself the judge of the whole world, and you're not gonna facilitate justice. You're gonna kill. You're gonna take out the righteous together with the wicked. Chalila lecha. God forbid. He didn't say God forbid, but whatever the translation we had was, how could this possibly happen? The outrage. A chesed guy being outraged? You go to the airport and there's the delay. So the gevura person gets really upset. It might explode, right? Blow up. The chesed guy's like, oh, I can make friends. The chesed guy's like, whatever, part of the party. And here, you know what happens? Here, Avraham says to God, the first approach is the harsh approach. Yes, he also mixes in reconciliation, negotiation, and prayer. But the first approach is a harsh approach. This reminds us of an unbelievable lesson, as we'll see over here. When it comes to yourself and your own, Torah and mitzvot, you can choose your own path based on your personality. But when someone is in danger, don't fall back on your personality to desist from helping them. Are you with me on this? Don't fall back on your nature or your comfort and desist from actually stepping up and making a difference. You have to throw at the wall whatever it takes, and that's the deeper meaning of Vayigash. And he approached. What did he approach? A brand new posture in his life. He was never harsh before with God, maybe with anyone. He was always the nice guy. And now he's being harsh. Why? Vayigash. He had to approach, he had to come to a new place to summon up that strength to stand up to God, or at least to try to stand up to God to achieve this result. This is going to come into sharp, crystal clear focus as we go through the next few texts. And then I want to round it out with, I think, a powerful, powerful takeaway lesson.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
I get Abraham, like his everything. But I thought Gevurah meant more strength, like inner strength.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that Isaac had that. He let everybody control him, including giving the blessings. I mean,
right. I hear that. I think Gevurah. No, your question is if Gevurah means you have a strong inner strength, like internally strong, right? Then he seems to be someone who's pushed around, like he walks like a lamb to the slaughter, or sheep to the slaughter. He is letting himself be taken advantage of by his younger son, Yaakov, who takes the blessings.
He doesn't fight God when God says sacrifice.
Right. So he doesn't stand up for himself. I hear that. I don't really know how to answer that specific on the question. But if you look at Gevurah in a slightly different way, not necessarily someone who is, who is like, it's all about me, but someone who is like really sincere and working on themselves. So they might say like, okay, what am I being called upon to do? Like, what do I need? Like, there's like a lot of internal work over there. Okay. So less of a, I don't know. I think it's slightly different than the way you're thinking of it, but that's not to say that Gevurah sometimes isn't the way you're thinking of it. But I think in this case, it's a slightly different variation of Gevurah.
I think Gevurah is kind of like being gripped. Like that's kind of what I imagine when I think about Gevurah, like just like God gripping you or someone gripping. But on that, like kind of same note, I do feel like when Abraham is saying, oh, well, there could be 50 righteous people in here, would you really destroy them? I do feel like that was his said before he went to the Gevurah's side of being like, oh, well, like this doesn't befit you.
Yeah.
This isn't your
even the negotiation was with a little bit of strength and power. Absolutely. So let's take a look now. I think I want to, and maybe we'll just do it. Oh, actually, here we go. Text 9. I'm going to read. I think everyone had a chance to read, so I'm just going to read the last few texts. Text number 9 comes from the Zohar. This is a great place to start. The Zohar says the following. Each of the patriarchs knew God through his own unique lens. Abraham knew him through chesed, which is the attribute of gedula, greatness, the right hand of the king. That is the trait he grasped and never abandoned. He constantly did good for people, and this was established about him for his actions aligned with that spiritual level. Isaac, next page. Isaac knew him through the attribute of Gevurah, strength, for he is called the fear of Isaac, and he remained in awe of him always. Jacob knew him through the attribute of Tiferet, beauty, harmony, which is a blend of Chesed and Pachad, fear, strength, and is called Emet, truth. This was the trait he embraced. This is what is written: you will give truth to Jacob, Titain Emet Liyaakov. All right. So without, I don't want to get bogged down on the other patriarchs because this is about Abraham for right now. So again, text 9, which is Zohar Chadash. If you want it like Kabbalah, like the primary work of Kabbalah is the Zohar. And here we have clearly a delineation: Abraham Chesed, Isaac Gvura, Jacob Tiferet. Again, leaving aside for right now the other two. Abraham Chesed means that Abraham, was all about kindness and love and yes, sir, I'm on board. God, I love you. I'll do whatever you want. And that makes it surprising. Take a look at text 10 from the great Maharal of Prague. Who was also quite the mystic. I mean, if you can create a golem, you are quite the mystic. Know that our sages of blessed memory hinted at something very profound in this midrash. Abraham directed his words toward 3 divine names: Kel, Elokim, and Havaya. Corresponding to the name Elokim, which represents strict justice, he spoke harshly as if waging battle. Corresponding to the name Kel, which signifies kindness, he spoke words of appeasement. And corresponding to the name Havaya, the unique divine name, he directed prayer and mercy. 3 names, 3 attributes: Chesed, Gevura. I'm not going to use Gevura, Chesed again. He's strict justice. He spoke harshly. He spoke words of appeasement, and he prayed, and he asked for prayer and mercy. And those were the 3 approaches he took, meaning he was able to move off of his default personality to do whatever it took to spare his people. And here we go, text 11. The Rebbe marvels at this in a positive way, speaking to the ability of Abraham to transcend his own personality when needed. It is well known that Abraham's defining trait is Abraham, my beloved. So it's puzzling. How is it possible that Abraham would speak harshly, and especially to God? Even more, of the 3 approaches, battle, appeasement, and prayer, Abraham began with speaking stern words harshly. From this, right? So in other words, how dare you, God? From this, we understand that although Abraham employed all these methods, nevertheless, his initial approach was to speak stern words. Now, given his deep love, shouldn't he have started with appeasement and prayer? So why does he start with that harsh approach? And the answer, my friends, the answer is because it wasn't about him in this moment. It was about the need of the people of Sodom. They needed him to step up to the plate. And when someone else needs you, don't be weak. You can't be like, well, I'm usually a nice guy. You can't be a nice guy sometimes. You got to stand up to defend your family or your fellow human being. Are you with me on this? If it doesn't make a difference which approach you take, sure, go with your personality. But if someone else's life is on the line, you got to step up. Take a look at this. This is from remarkably the previous Rabbi. We see another profound aspect in the way our forefather Abraham acted with goodness and kindness. Of course, he was guided by intellect and deep inner intention with the goal of bringing people closer to God. But his acts of goodness and kindness were not just a result of his naturally good character, rather because it was God's will. This is what it means to truly carry out a mitzvah exclusively because this is what God wants. This was the way Abraham served God, even with his trait of kindness. Everything he did wasn't driven by his inherently kind nature, but rather in order to fulfill God's will. Therefore, when the particular divine intention of chesed, kindness, was not applicable, he also displayed the attribute of judgment and strength, gevura, meaning if you say that Avraham was so connected with chesed that he could only employ chesed, then the question is, well, how did he speak sternly to God? So we understand, no, it wasn't that he was stuck in his personality. All things being equal, he went with chesed. But when chesed was no longer an option, when he had to speak with gevura, he had no problem switching to another modality because it was about doing whatever it takes. And here, the Rebbe draws a powerful lesson for our own lives. This episode, text 13 in the Torah, is a powerful instruction to all of Abraham's children, meaning you and I. When a situation arises involving saving a Jewish soul, whether in physical or spiritual danger, to bring the hearts of Jews closer to the Father in heaven, don't hesitate or calculate. Get involved with all your strength, even in a manner that feels contrary to your nature, even if it involves speaking harshly. Make use of all available means, battle, appeasement, and prayer. You can't sleep on someone else's behalf or when someone else is at danger, right? If someone, God forbid, is in danger, physically or spiritually, you can't say, well, it's not my personality. You know, the Rebbe didn't speak these words in a vacuum. You know, we speak about this often, the Rebbe's mitzvah campaigns. And part of it was to go over to people in the street sometimes and say, hey, are you Jewish? You want to wrap tefillin? Or you want Shabbat candles? Or how about shaking a lulav and an esrog in my makeshift sukkah, right? And that requires a little bit of courage. You got to have a little bit of inner strength, a little bit of to say, hey, I can tell you're Jewish. You look Jewish to me. Like, let's do a mitzvah. What if I'm
Even
like, oh,
even
chutzpah,
chutzpah.
yeah. But I'm a shy person. Like, I'm not going to speak. Who am I to say that? It's not about you. Don't make this about you and your personality. You might be shy, but it's not about you. There's a need. There's a need, right? A Jew needs a mitzvah, and you can help provide it. Do it. You just got to do it. You got to get over yourself and do what's needed. And that's what Avraham teaches us in this week's Torah portion. He gets over himself, his natural tendency toward chesed and love and meekness and whatever. Maybe not meek, but like, you know, appeasement or whatever. He gets over that and he says, okay, what is needed of me in this moment? I'm going to do it. If it requires speaking harshly to God Almighty, I'm ready to do it. I want to end with this additional lesson because to me, it's so obvious, but I think it's so important to mention. You know, when it comes to defending the Jewish people, defending Israel, historically, there have been three approaches. One approach is to say, strong military. We need a strong military. We need like an IDF, and we need fighter jets, and we need tanks, and we need soldiers, and we need drafts, and we need all these things. Another approach is to say we need AIPAC. We need diplomacy, and we need to schmooze up Washington. We need to treat all the Congress people, the congressmen and women, you know, we have to get them on board with this, fly them to Israel and show them how amazing it is as a startup nation and, you know, have some shawarma and some schnitzel and some pita and falafel and all that stuff, get them on board. And another approach is to say, are you kidding me? You got to pray, you got to daven, you got to study Torah, wrap tefillin, and be connected with God. That's the only salvation. And in fact, historically, all three groups have turned against each other. Right, the Hawks, the military people say that what am I looking for? The Washington, the lobbyists or whatever it is, weak, and the religious nuts. Next, and then the mediators say the war people are too extreme. They're off the rails. And the religious still nuts. And the religious people say that the other two aren't even Jewish at this point because like they're missing the whole thing. If you're not religious, you're not even Jewish. And there's a stalemate, and it's fighting till today. Who should fight? How should they fight? Internal fighting, all of this stuff. Can we not realize that Avraham Avinu, Abraham, our forefather, employed all three? You need all three to win. You need all three to gain victory. You need might. Number one, you need appeasement, number two, and you need prayer, number three. Instead of turning against each other and saying, you have to do it my way or else you're bad, why don't we say, hey, I'll do this, I'll take this aspect, you take the other, and you take the other, and all three of us can walk shoulder to shoulder toward a common goal and accomplish it together, as opposed to forgetting about what we're trying to accomplish and turning against each other and beating each other up. My hope for the future, my hope for the present, is that we can recognize the brilliance of Avraham's strategy. And again, he backed off ultimately, but we can take, you know, the message and not back off. May we take the message, the lesson from Avraham, which is that it takes all three approaches. It takes a strong approach, it takes a negotiating approach, and it also takes a prayerful approach to get things done. May we get along with each other, appreciate what the other one brings to the table. Like if I'm more the prayer guy, well, thank God the other guy knows how to use a gun. And if the guy knows how to use a gun, thank God this guy knows how to study Torah. Let's all appreciate the gifts that the other one complements us with. And with this, hopefully we'll get our aims accomplished and make the world a better place. And let us say, Amen. Thank you for joining me today for Torah Studies. I do want to mention, of course, coming up Monday, an incredible two-part series. This is with, that's the QR code. You guys can hold up your phone even. This is with Brendan Murphy. It is called Why the Jews? The Long and Tragic History of Anti-Semitism and What It Means for Us Today. Two-part lecture with Mr. Brendan Murphy, Marist School's renowned and award-winning Holocaust educator. He is renowned and he is award-winning, and it is coming up starting this Monday evening, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., and the following Monday evening, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., 2 hours times 2, 4 hours of learning. It is going to be very, very special. We have a great crowd coming. Please join and take part of the educational experience. All right. And of course, we have the Kabbalah meeting tomorrow. We have now, because the class has grown in the interim, 120 people enrolled in the course. All right. Get in while the getting's good, because that is a quite the special treat. All right. I think that's it. No, I'll close it. All right. We'll see you Laila Tov, everybody. See you guys. Take care.